Hey everybody, this is Tracy here for another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here to recap American Crime Season 3, Episode 4. So the show opens with Louise talking about Teo to what appears to be an investigator. The man gives him this huge photo album that was like, did I say album? This huge photo album that was about this thick, and it was full of files on dead migrant workers. So we find that Teo is definitely deceased and that he was pulled from the river and has been cremated. And the guy tells Louise that he can have the remains or the ashes if he wants them. So a badly beaten Coy goes to someone at the farm and asks how much he owes in order to leave. And the guy tells him that he owes, I can't remember if it was $335 or $365, but it doesn't really matter because Coy doesn't have either. So when Coy asks how is he supposed to pay off the debt, the guy tells him to work harder and work faster. So Coy calls his brother to ask for the money, but the brother doesn't want to help him, and I believe he told him not to call his house anymore. So Shay tells Kamara that she wants to have an abortion, and she also lets her know that she has had one previously when she lived with her dad in DC. And Kamara lets her know that in North Carolina, minors have to have parental consent to have an abortion, or they will need to go before a judge to receive court ordered approval. And I'm not sure if that law passed here in Florida, but I know at one point, probably about 10 years ago, they were trying to enact a similar law here. So Shay is confused by the information, and she's like, well, I didn't have to go through that before, but Kamara lets her know that in North Carolina it is the law and that she will either need consent or she'll have to go before a judge. So Kamara goes back to the fertility clinic to discuss another treatment, and she's trying to do something new, and I guess it was like a value package or something where she gets more than one attempt and things are really adding up, and the lady lets her know that more than likely if the procedure doesn't take, that she can get her money back, but there's no guarantee that she will be reimbursed if it doesn't work. So Shay is talking to one of the males from the shelter, and he tells her that he saw her steal the phone. And the two talk briefly, and he asks to see this device that Shay is playing with. And so I think in my last recap, I said that Kamara had given her a telephone, but it's not a phone. It's actually like a little portable camera or something. So she shows him the camera, but when he suggests that they go off together and take some pictures together, she shuts down and tells him no, that she doesn't want to do that. Shay and Kamara meet with a court officer to talk about getting a waiver for her to have the abortion, and her request is denied, and she's told that she will need to get a waiver from her parents. And so Shay asks if there is any other option, and she is told that if she can prove that going to her parents to get consent will cause her harm, then the courts may grant her the waiver. However, she can't be more than 20 weeks pregnant. So in the next scene, we have Shay, and she's getting the ultrasound, and we learn that she's 14 weeks pregnant. And Kamara becomes emotional when she hears the baby's heartbeat. So I'm just waiting on the episode where Kamara finally breaks down and asks Shay if she can adopt the baby, because that would make all the sense in the world to me. If Kamara doesn't have to go through the fertility thing, she can help Shay in the process and get the baby, but we'll see if that happens. So JD is crying on Jeanette's shoulder, and he said that he went to see his dad, but he wasn't allowed to visit because Lorianne told the people at the facility not to allow him in. And he pleads with Jeanette to talk to Lorianne and Carson so that he can go in and visit the dad. And then he's still insisting that he would have been a better person to run the farm. And let me stick a pin right here, because when I tell y'all, I have these characters all confused on this show. So I thought that Lori Ann was the mother, Carson was the son, and that JD was a cousin. I don't know where I got any of that from, but it looks like Lori Ann, JD, and Carson are all siblings, and then it's the dad that's in the hospital who's like terminally ill. And then one other thing I didn't realize, and I found out, when I was researching for the recap, is that Diego and Isaac are brothers. I didn't pick up on that earlier in the show either. And let me see, was there somebody else I messed up? And then I pointed out the fact that I thought it was a phone that Kamara had slipped to Shay, but it really was like some kind of camera. So I don't know if I'm not paying attention because I'm trying to take the notes, or if they're just not making these things clear in the episodes, or what's going on. But anyway, I just wanted to make those clarifications to you guys. So Jeanette meets with Lori Ann and Carson to plead JD's case, and Lori Ann says that he showed up at the hospital with liquor on his breath, so there was no way she was going to allow him to go in and see the dad. And she also confronts Jeanette for using the family's money to make a donation to that organization. Remember, her and JD went to hear this guy speak in the last episode. And so Lori Ann feels that by making the donation that she's kind of implicating the family and saying that the family knows that something's going on and that they're trying to cover their tracks. But anyway, she said that they can't have any record of supporting an organization like that. And actually, when she brought it up to Jeanette, she said that Jeanette had stole the money from the family, and Jeanette was like, how can I steal my own money? And Lori Ann lets her know that it's not her own money, that it's their family's money, and that, she can't be spending it however she wants to. And so it turns out that Carson placed a stop payment on the check to cover up any record that they actually tried to make the donation. And then there was this brief scene with Jeanette and Carson as they're leaving Lori Ann, where she's asking him, how dare you put a stop payment on that check and not say anything to me? And then Carson said that he thought she never would have known that he did the stop payment, and that, he wasn't planning on, Lori Ann and her having this confrontation. So there's a whole lot of tension going on there. And now I'm starting to wonder, because, I'd be making up scenarios, but now I'm starting to wonder if possibly Jeanette and JD had a thing for each other before her and Carson met and got married, or maybe they had an affair after her and Carson. But Carson seems to be very timid, and Lori Ann is just running the whole show. So Luis calls home to his wife, to let her know that he has information about Teo. But when she gets on the phone and she starts asking, did you find Teo? Is he okay? He can't bring himself to let her know that something has happened to Teo and that Teo has been killed. So instead, he lies and says that Teo was working on a farm and that everybody liked him there. And then, she's like, well, when are you coming home? Are you bringing Teo back? And then he just hangs up on her. So the following day, we have a little quick scene where Luis actually buys a gun, or he had a gun with him, but we see him like unwrapping this gun. So we know that he's going to go after whoever killed Teo. So Coy is back in the fields and he passes out again. So Isaac takes him to this bootleg doctor who gives him some pills and says that he's okay. So the visit costs $35, which will be added on to the $360 something that he already owes. And so Diego is there and tells the doctor, to give Coy some extra pills. And I think they gave him, he had like 30 pills, so they may have doubled the prescription or whatever. So when they're alone, Isaac says that he remembers when Coy laughed at him when he first met him on the street and made the suggestion that Coy come and pick the tomatoes. And so I guess he's kind of like saying, look who's on the ground now. Like, I'm still over you, and I have more than you have. I guess that's where he was going with that comment. But then he just got up and walked out. So later that night, Luis goes to Coy and asks him to text Isaac and have him come to where Coy stays at. And so Luis asks if he has family and tells him that there's nothing keeping him there. He doesn't have to pay them back this money. They can't hold him hostage, and that, he should just go ahead and leave and go back to his family and get his life together. When Isaac arrives, Luis asks him to, tell him about Teo. And at first, Isaac was acting really confused, like he didn't know who Teo was. And then they had like these flashbacks going on of the day that Teo died, and when Isaac was fighting him, and then Isaac took him out and drowned him in a lake. And so while he's talking, he's telling Luis that he didn't do anything to Teo, that Teo did it to himself. And then all of a sudden Luis shot him. He was already holding the gun on him. And I thought that Isaac was going to say, well, it wasn't me, like, let's talk about this or whatever. But he was just so confused in the moment, because I guess he never thought that anything like this would happen. But Luis shot him like 4, 5, 6. How many bullets the gun held, that's how many times Luis shot him. So at the same time, Coy takes all of the pills and ODs on the side of the road. But like clockwork, the paramedics arrive and give him the Narcan. They assure him that he's going to be okay and that they are going to get him to the hospital as quickly as possible. So Luis tosses the gun into the lake where Isaac drowned Teo, and then calls his wife to let her know that he's on his way home. And she asks if he was bringing Teo, and I can't recall, or I didn't hear what he said, but I'm thinking if he said yes, it was because he had went and retrieved the ashes from the guy at the medical examiner's office, or whatever that location was. So the show introduces some new players. And we have a scene where we're at the airport, and there's a Haitian woman named Gabrielle, and she is trying to enter into the United States, but the process is really complicated, and they're like telling her that she has to go over to some kiosk, but there's like all these people around, like hundreds of people trying to use the kiosk. And so she's looking really confused, like maybe this is the first time she's been in the United States. And so we learn that she's come to the country to work for a couple named Claire and Nicholas, and I think their last name was Coates, and she's going to be their nanny. They have a little boy. So Nicholas runs a furniture manufacturing business, and we have a scene where he's meeting with a buyer, and the man is upset about the quality of the pieces, and he's saying that they've diminished, and he talks about the stitching is different, and that the furniture is made with plywood, I guess, instead of more expensive piece of wood. So Nicholas is facing the same dilemma as the Hesbys. He has to figure out a way to cut costs but maintain the same quality of his product. So Nicholas and his wife, they go to dinner, and he lets her know that he's unhappy that she hired a nanny who only speaks French. And so that's like really agitating him, on top of the fact that he's got to figure out how to get his labor costs down to save his business. And then later we see the nanny come in to check on Claire, and I think Claire was crying, and that's what drew her into the kitchen. But she yells at her and orders her back into her bedroom. So it is evident that their marriage is strained in more ways than one, and it'll be interesting to see how their storylines play into the human trafficking and the servitude topics. Like, is there a connection with the Hesbys, or how is any of this, or would they have any connection at all? So this was another great episode, but I'm hoping that we haven't seen the last of Luis, and I really need him to be a part of bringing down the Hesby family. But it looks like he's headed back to Mexico, because the last time we saw him, he was actually on the Greyhound bus leaving out of town. And so let me know what you guys thought about this episode. Leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, guys, take care. Bye-bye.